Okay, hello guys. Line number 6. The criticism of other people matters. Years ago, I was a keynote speaker at an event hosted by Deepak Chopra. After my presentation, I sat down in the audience to watch the rest of the programming. To my surprise, a tall figure approached and loomed over me, and I looked up to see one of my favorite actor Jim Carrey. What followed was a deep conversation in the lobby about creativity. At one point, he said, "Jim, I'm working on Dumb and Dumber 2, and I need to get really smart to be dumb and dumber." A few weeks later, we spent a day together at his home. During one of our breaks, while making guacamole, one of my favorite brain fruits, in the kitchen, I asked, "Why do you do what you do? You're such a unique actor and you're a little bit extreme on camera," Jim said. "I act that way because I want to give the people who are watching permission to be themselves. The biggest travesty in the world is people preventing and limiting themselves from expressing who they really are because they're afraid of what other people think." This sentiment comes close to a religion for Jim. He calls it freeing people from concern. He elaborated on this during a commencement address at Maharishi International University. "The purpose of my life had always been to free people from concern. How will you serve the world? What do they need that your talent can provide? That's all you have to figure out. The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Everything you gain in life will rot and fall apart, and all that will be left of you is what was in your heart. The fastest learners on the planet are children, and that's partly because they don't care what others think of them. They have no shame around falling. They will fall 300 times and get up 300 times in the course of learning to walk and don't feel embarrassed. They just know they don't want to walk. As we get older, we have a harder time staying this open. We might take a singing lesson or maybe a coding class, and if we hit a flat note or make a mistake as we learn, we shrink or stop. Part of being limitless is learning to let go of the fear of criticism from other people. History is littered with examples of those who overcame the negative opinions of the people around them. The Wright brothers accomplished their incredible feat of making a flying machine through the air and instantly received virtually no acclaim for it. When they returned home from their inaugural flight on December 17, 1903, they were not met with brass bands and cigars and streamers. They were met with doubt. Their biographer, Fred Kelly, wrote that the neighbors had a hard time believing what had happened. Said one, "I know you boys are truthful, and if you say you flew through the air in the machine, I believe you. But then down there on the Carolina coast, you had special condition to help you. Of course, you couldn't do it anywhere else." Hardly the enthusiastic response one would expect, right? The papers and media didn't report on their accomplishment either. According to Kelly, noted scientists of the time had already explained why man couldn't fly, so no newspaper reporter was willing to report on the story for fear of being humiliated. No editor wanted to print a story that directly refuted a respected scientist's proclamations that flying was not scientifically possible. The lack of public recognition didn't faze the Wright brothers. They knew they had more work to do and set about perfecting their flying machine, which eventually did earn the recognition that it deserved. Most of us fear the opinions of other people when we simply think about trying something new. What the right story shows is that public imagination is woefully underwhelming, and people have a hard time reconciling what they believe is possible with what is actually happening. Here's the truth. Creating the life you want can be scary, but you know what's scary or regret. One day we will take our final breaths, and not one of other people's opinion or your fears will matter. What will matter is how we lived. Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. People will doubt you and criticize you no matter what you do. You'll never know your true potential until you break the unfair judgment you place on yourself. Don't allow other people's opinions and expectation to run or ruin your life. New belief. It's not your job to like, love, or respect me. It's mine. Line number 7. Genius is born. Bruce Lee is known today as a film star, philosopher, and one of the most accomplished martial arts fighters in the history of the sport, and yet given his background, you wouldn't have pegged him as a future icon if you were under the assumption that genius is born. Lee's family moved from San San Francisco to Hong Kong shortly after he was born. Not long after they arrived, Hong Kong was occupied by Japan, making it a politically and socially tumultuous place to grow up. As a young man, Lee was faced with the difficulty of being the ultimate soldier. He was not purely Chinese, so the student in the classes made fun of him. He also wasn't British like other kids in his private school, so he was frequently taunted for being Oriental. The feeling of tension was ever present for him, so he turned to fighting to battle his way through. Fighting began to define him. His grades were low and he fought so often in school that he transferred to a different primary school. When Lee was 13, he met his teacher Yip Man, who taught him Wing Chun. He was accepted into the famous teacher's school and began to learn this style of Kung Fu. Not unlike the rest of his education, he was still taunted by the Chinese children who felt he was not good enough. He was not enough like them to be allowed to learn the technique. He constantly had to prove himself in his abilities, and his fighting spilled over into the streets. This internal tension, coupled with Hong Kong's slide into gang violence, led to Lee fighting far more often than learning. He developed a reputation for being street tough through his willingness and propensity for battle. After one particularly bad street fight, a high-ranking police officer approached Lee's parents and told them their son would be arrested. The boy he had beat up the night before was the son of this police officer. Lee's father quickly arranged for Lee to go back to America. After all, he still had citizenship. So off Lee went with $100 in his pocket. Like most Chinese kids who had just gotten off the boat, my first job was washing and busting dishes, said Lee in a later interview. He worked to support himself with odd jobs and eventually started teaching martial arts. Lee wasn't just talented, he was also willing to teach other people, and he accepted everyone who came to him as a student regardless of their race or background.